Basically, let's just go through the spiritual process, the spiritual journey, because that's actually why we're here. We're not here so that I can offer you tarot. We're not here just so that I can, tell you what's going on in your life and things like that. We're here because we're all on this spiritual process of ascension and transcendence. So, today we are going to talk about the meditation on the Fool card. So if you see here, you have this like young looking kid, and symbolism, by the way, was our first human language. So symbolism means everything. So we have the guy with the, red coat. You can see that as being somewhat, he's tattered, and so he's not necessarily at a place of royalty yet, but you definitely see that he might be aristocratic, or he might have some sort of, he might have had some sort of status, and maybe lost that status, or he kind of took what he had. He has a satchel behind him, and he has this white flower. I don't know if that's like focusing. Okay. And he has this white flower, which represents purity. Let's explain the importance of the Fool card. So on the spiritual alchemical process, we all have to start somewhere. 0 is your starting point. 0 is that will. It's the infinite potentiality, but it's also your will to press forward. Oftentimes, if you are reading this in a tarot reading, a lot of times people like to, watch where you're going. And although that is actually true, the other interpretation of that is that you are at a point of infinite potentiality. You are at a point where you could go if you ascend through the rest of the major arcana, which are actually archetypes of the personality. So, if you ascend through, being the Fool to being the Hierophant to being the Fool underneath the moon, to being the Emperor, mastering yourself, in some sort of way, if you actually ascend through that process, ultimately what happens is you have the last card, which is the World. And the World is representative of completion. You've completed the journey. Some people might be familiar with Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. This is actually essentially the beginning of that. And so you start with a process or a divine inspiration. This guy is going somewhere. So there's movement in this card, even though no one's moving, and actually, but there's movement in this card. And the thing is when we are moving sort of forward, we don't know what's on the other side. We don't know if we're going to fall off the cliff. We don't know if everything's going to crumble. But that's almost the beauty. That's almost the beauty of the youthfulness of that. You can also think about when you were younger and you had to go to different school ages, so you started off as the Fool in first grade, and then you completed whatever process, that education had. And then once you completed that education of the first grade, then you moved on to being the Fool of the second grade, and that came with its challenges, and it came with its learning curves, and you didn't get everything correctly, and and maybe you failed some tests and things like that, but you did move on, and now you're the Fool in the third grade. And so this is a life process now. A lot of people are afraid to sort of be in the place of the Fool because the fact that tradition would typically tell you to not take that journey. Typically you have in some cards, not in my card, because in the Marseille Tarot deck, you have a little dog that follows behind him. I don't think the dog is actually in this card. You have a little dog that follows behind him that basically says, like, watch where you're going. It's a little guy. Remember, symbolism, first human language, symbolism. And it's a little guy. It's a little dog that says, hey, watch where you're going. But we can also see that little dog as being tradition, being, the parental or authority figures, being what society might have told you about which path not to go on because, you might fall off the cliff. Well, the journey, again, through the major arcana and through all these archetypes that ultimately leads you to completion, ultimately leads you to your divine purpose, which is the ultimate goal here, is to get to your divine purpose. You have to overcome those voices, because in the card, like I said, the dog is usually, okay, this is like not mirror image. The dog is usually here. So he's behind him, as his head's not up in the air and he's not really paying attention to the dog. There's also the representation of the sun, which is, you can kind of see in the corner here a little bit. But there's a representation of the sun that says, if you just continue down the journey, the universe will support you. The universe will provide the things that you need, or God, or whoever you believe in. The universe will provide the things that you need. The universe will ultimately support you in your journey. But you can't really listen to the dog, because the dog isn't the one going through the journey, And this could also be like loyal friends and things like that. It's not necessarily a bad voice. The tradition's not bad. Society's not bad. It's not saying any of those things. But for you to actually enter into your full self, for you to fully know thyself, which is your greatest power. Your greatest power is in knowing fully who you are. In continuing down the process of, good to see you too. Anyway, so in continuing down that process, that's where you finally find your purpose on this planet, your divine will. But you're not going to find it if you listen to your family members, if you listen to your friends, if you listen to what society says, because they're not on your journey. They're not on your purpose. Seeking counsel is one thing, but really curtailing your opinion of how you should structure your life and who you are to what other people say and what society would say and what family members would say is going to stop you from going down the path of the fool. Another good example, which we'll just go into it. Another good example would be like the Wizard of Oz, the Wizard of Oz, you have Dorothy, and she's put into this role. She comes to Oz basically, and she's put into this role of having to be the fool in that moment. She knows nothing. All she knows is she wants to get back home. That is her will. Her will is to go back home. The will of the other characters, you have the Scarecrow, who I think wants to find a brain. I have to remember this. Scarecrow wants to find brain. The Tin Man wants to No, I'm not doing a reading for anyone. I'm just kind of talking about the spiritual aspects of the Fool. Anyway, anyway, the characters. Y'all know the characters. Anyway, my point is that she has to go down the yellow brick road to find her home. Now, she goes down the yellow brick road. She encounters all the obstacles along the way. You always have that adversary that is going to present itself while you're on your path to your to your will, to your purpose, to your destination. And it's all the things that she learns along the path that gives her a better appreciation for where she was. Because remember, in the very beginning, she was kind of complaining about where she was. She was kind of not really happy from where she was. That was the first movie I have memory of watching. Yeah, that for me, it was Peter Pan and that. But Peter Pan's also a good reference too, but we can get into that a little bit later. Anyway, so basically, she has to find herself to the Emerald City. Now, and this was my thoughts about this. this isn't something I've heard places, but the Emerald City, ultimately where all of those things are found, the emerald color is actually connected to the Anahata chakra, which is actually a heart chakra. Fun fact. And so ultimately they find that all the things that they're looking for, the courage, the brain, home, a heart, etc., all of these things are found in the Anahata chakra. So anyway, but to get there, to get back to her heart, to get back to her home, she has to start that journey, and she can't let fear overtake her from continuing down that path. Because with all the things that she had going on, at any point in time, she could have actually just kind of stopped and be like, you know what, let's go back. Let's go back. Maybe I like the little dwarves. Maybe I like the little singing dwarves. Maybe I like them. I don't know. But no, she has to continue down the path to actually get home. And so that's ultimately where we're going here. That's ultimately where we want to go. We want to start whatever path. Maybe for some of this is resonating to a journey that you want to kind of go on or partake in. But for you to oh, don't cry. Don't cry. I'm happy to see you too. But if there is a journey that we want to go to, we can't let fear sort of overtake us. We can't let the voices of other people overtake us. We can't let it didn't work out for so and so overtake us, because it didn't work out for so and so, maybe that wasn't their path or their journey. But you have a different calling, and you know that calling. In your Anahata chakra, you are aware of your calling. You know what you're supposed to be doing. Outside of these constructs, outside of these sort of ideals of who you're supposed to be, you know ultimately what your purpose here is. It is not your and purpose is different from occupation. Hold on. Moving into my new place September 1st, and I needed this. Oh, I would love to. I would love to visit you, and thank you so much, Donna. But ultimately, you know what your purpose is, and that's not for anybody else to decide or to tell you. I can't tell you what your purpose or where you're supposed to go or how to get there is, I can't tell you that. Nobody can tell you that. Nobody can tell you that, because nobody is here with their own everybody else is here with their own divine purpose on this planet. We mentioned, this is what I needed to hear. Are you doing a reading for someone in particular? No, I'm not doing a reading for anyone in particular. But I'm really glad that that this message resonated with y'all. But yeah, so we can even go into the story of Peter Pan. Actually, that was actually something that I wanted to reference. So if we think of sort of the fool being stuck. So let's think about the fool being stuck. Okay. We have the story of Peter Pan. And Peter Pan is stuck in his full energy. He's stuck in a certain place that makes him comfortable. And he's like, oh my gosh, this full energy, this full life, this is where I'm at. This is what we're doing. I love it here, And so then there's Neverland. You never have to grow up. You never have to descend upon that journey. You never have to go. And who is his adversary? His adversary is Hook, And so Hook is the one who, is stuck in his own right, but not stuck in the fool, but he's stuck in sort of, the fool has to grow up. And so it's kind of one of those things where it's actually really interesting sort of imbalance of the opposites. Yeah, exactly. It's actually an imbalance of the opposites. So you have one who does not want to partake in the journey, and you have one that's stuck in the journey of the fool. So you have both, right? You have one who who wants to unalive the fool, who's stuck in his journey. And you have the one who's like, well, why are you so serious? Why can't you also, learn how to appreciate the journey of that? And so they're stuck in this place. They're stuck in Neverland. And it takes a myriad of different archetypes to sort of come in and actually be able to I guess kind of fix the issue or whatever you want to call it. Anyway, my point is, hold on. So Peter's stuck or participating in the journey. Peter's stuck in the journey. So here's the other thing that happens. So, we were talking about moving forward in the Fool, right? But sometimes what happens when you don't go through the initiatory process. Oh, hold on. How do you recognize that you're the Fool and not the hero? The Fool is the hero. The Fool is the hero. Okay, sorry. Back to Peter real quick. And we'll get back to the Fool and the hero and whatever. But so basically, Peter is stuck in his Fool energy. It's like somebody who never goes through the process, who never continues down the road. He's just kind of stuck in the limerence, I guess if you want to call it, the limerence of the sun, the limerence of his energy. This would be Peter, who's just kind of like, instead of having a destination, it's just like, you know what? I just like walking around. We're just going to keep going. You know what I'm saying? And he never really gets to a destination. He's not moving towards his divine will. He's stuck. He's not willing to go through the initiatory process, which takes him into being, the emperor, which takes him into the Hierophant energy, takes him, to the magician, realizing he has all tools he needs. He doesn't want to go through the dark night of the soul, which is the moon. He's not really willing to go through, make it all the way down unto the world. So he's not willing to do all that. So that's where Peter is. Peter is stuck in not wanting to go through everything it takes. And the death card is actually along the way too. So there's going to be a death and transformation at some point, which is going to bring you from the state that it's the ultimate point of alchemy, where the base version of you is now becoming something different. And he doesn't want to go through that process. So that's where Peter is stuck. Whereas then you have people who, if they were never allowed to go through the full process. So if you perhaps lived in a household where you weren't able to be a child, where you weren't able to experience the full energy, where you weren't able to know what it's like for infinite potentiality or infinite possibility. Someone told you who you had to be, someone told you what you had to do, or whatever, then you end up becoming the hook character, which is resentful of Peter, who happens to be the Fool. You're resentful of that energy because you never had the opportunity to go through it. Does that make sense to y'all? Okay, so then how do you recognize that you are the Fool and not the hero? So basically, along the Fool's journey, okay, he becomes the hero. If he continues down that path, he becomes the hero eventually. And as he becomes the hero, like in the Joseph Campbell, and I'll get into it like later, not during this session, but like later. If you follow the hero's journey through Joseph Campbell, the Fool the Fool is the hero. You are always the infinite potentiality that exists. You are always that, But the whole thing is he has to go to the other town, and he has to fight the dragon, and he has to do all these things, and he has to get the treasure. And then eventually he comes back in full circle to the Fool again. But he's also the hero that has the treasure that, he was supposed to get. The Arthurian legend of sorts, if you think about it. Arthur has to go get the sword, he's the only guy, etc. And he comes back with that thing that he gets to give to the village. and the village being the people. So so basically going through the hero's journey through the Fool, you get to a certain point where you have a certain knowledge, you have a certain awareness, you have a certain, whatever that is, to be able to give back. Because you're not here for you, you're here for your tribe, if you will. You're here for the village. And so the Fool is the hero. I hope that made sense. So anyway, the meditation on the Fool. So if you are somebody who wasn't allowed to partake in that journey as a child, and your development through being able to, to have that childlike innocence, to maybe even make mistakes, you're welcome. You weren't able to make mistakes, or you weren't just able to experience within this realm of not knowing everything, then you're going to want to really sort of take this card and meditate on this, and meditate on what the Fool represents. And you're going to get some, and the Fool will talk to you. The Fool will actually give you new insights as to its meaning. You're going to see how the many ways of which maybe you haven't stepped into your initiatory processes, or maybe you're going to see areas of which maybe you can kind of heal some elements that makes you resentful of that journey. It's going to be a lot of kind of healing through meditating on that, but it's simple. Just take this card, if you have a deck, or you can just print out an image of it, take this card, get a candle or something like that, and just take some time and just and really kind of meditate on how have I maybe not stepped into my initiatory processes. How am I fearful of moving forward to my divine purpose? In what areas am I resentful of seeing other people who, embody that energy moving along their purpose? How have I maybe been the adversary? Maybe I've been the wicked witch, maybe I've been a wicked witch in some ways, and not allowing other people to actually go along the path, again, because I haven't been able to experience that. Or on the contrary, you might be somebody, kind of the hook character. Well, we just kind of mentioned that hook character who are resentful of that. Or you might be someone who is the Fool, who's just kind of constantly, I'm going to constantly try things, and I'm not going to move forward on them. I'm going to constantly try things, I'm not going to move forward on them. I'm going to constantly try things and not move forward on them. It's and this could also be in love relationships too. Maybe you're somebody who constantly likes the limerence of the, first in love period, but can't really move forward in the the more important phases of a relationship. Maybe in relationships, even with friends, maybe you might find yourself unintentionally, because I don't think a lot of people are intentionally doing this, but unintentionally being someone who is one of those, I'm there for a good time, but when it gets deep, I'm out kind of people. It's someone who's kind of stuck in that sort of Peter Pan energy of not wanting to take that journey. And in the journey is the treasure. In the journey is also the dragon, but in the journey is the treasure. And that's the treasure that you are to bring back as the hero. So, thank you guys for listening. There is no greater power than the power of knowing exactly who you are, which is why these messages are really important, which is why we're having this service right now. Because there's no greater power than the power of knowing exactly who you are. And once you know who you are, no one can help, no one can push you away from that. No one can deviate you from your path once you know. Okay. So again, thank you guys for joining. And if you'd like to book a reading, by all means, DM me. If you'd also like counseling on how to go through the process of finding your divine purpose, if you want counseling and how to heal yourself and getting yourself closer to love and fulfillment, hit me up. All right. You are very welcome. Thank you guys for coming, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.